Allah is not just the best of creators, Sam. Islam teaches that Allah is also the best of deceivers.
You got it. The best of all who deceivers. Now, just to remind you from a Christian perspective, the greatest deceiver of them all is not Yahweh God. That would be blasphemy. It's Satan.
And that's why this point is on our list, right? This is an insult to the Almighty. This is an insult to the creator of the universe to say that of all deceivers, it's one thing to say of all creators, God is the best of those who create. To say that of all deceivers, God is the best of those who deceive, that's some scary stuff.
This morning, Bassam Zawadi posted a nice thing on Facebook where he took a picture of a page from my book on the Quran and was basically saying, you know, it's nice to see someone honestly engaging. It was the issue of, it's always bothered me, but again, we've been consistent about this for a long time, but there are some people that'll quote Allah is the best of deceivers from the Quran and make this a big, huge argument. And as always, I try to put myself in the other person's shoes, look back toward myself and see, is there consistency? And we have to deal with the reality that there are times that God placed a lying spirit as an act of judgment in the mouths of false prophets to bring about the destruction of kings of Israel. And then you have that signal passage. And this may be where it would be good if apologists were also regular preachers who had to work through texts. You have that text when Paul writes to the Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, about how if you refuse to love the truth, God will cause you to love a lie. And so I just know that there are judgment texts in the Bible, both Old and New Testament, where God justly brings judgment and deceives people in their rebellion. God's under no obligation to grant his truth to those who are justly condemned by their own actions. They're sinners before God. God can bring about their destruction any way he chooses to do so. He can. Yeah, it's funny. People don't care if God brings hailstones to destroy people, but if he brings about their own destruction in some other fashion, that's not fair. So, anyways, in the book, I had was actually looking at a section in the Quran. I attempted to be as fair as possible with the text when I was dealing with it. I can't, but they're not fair with the Bible. Well, that's not an option for a Christian. Christians have a much higher standard to work with. So I tried to be fair with it, and I just basically said, some people argue that this means that, there's a fundamental problem with Allah's nature or something like that in the Quran. And I said, I don't think that's a fair way of reading this text. It would seem that it would probably be better taken in this way. Well, Bassam took a picture of that and posted that. And it's interesting, even on the other side, you have certain folks, it doesn't matter. You're automatically going to be considered to be the bad guy. This John Fontaine guy immediately comments, "Well, I just think this is just a way to try to, get people to basically attributing deception to me, even in doing something like that, like being fair with the Quran. It's still a deceptive thing. So they have their people who it doesn't matter, and of course we have our people. It doesn't matter what somebody else says. You've got your own. You got your mind made up, you got your paradigm, and everybody just needs to fit into your paradigm. And there can't be, that's the easy way of doing things. Got to admit, you can just all put it, everything's black and white, and they, and we's we, and that's it. But it doesn't really help get conversations going and actually get them to go anywhere at all. So it was interesting to see that.
It was brought up about he was asked to compare in case of, I guess, about God being trustworthy or deceptive, and God cannot lie, and things of this nature. And so he brought up a particular verse from the Quran, and he does mention that it's translated in different ways. And every time Christians bring this up, I always remind them, because it's always tied into the issue about Jesus' crucifixion and whether it was God's fault that Christianity came about and believed these things. However, I always remind Christians that in your scriptures, for example, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 11, it is not unusual for God to cause people to accept that which is false in order that they be punished and go astray.
Just to remind you, from a Christian perspective, the greatest deceiver of them all is not Yahweh God. That would be blasphemy.
2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 11 reads as follows. For this reason, God, not the devil, not someone else, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie. Who sends it? The devil. No. Who sends it? God. God sends the delusion so they will believe the lie. And so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth, but delighted in wickedness. Now, we can look through history and we see that, in fact, there were Christian writings and there were some groups of Christians that did not believe that Jesus had died. You see? So to say that it's a lost fault, no, this is wrong. Maybe you just unfortunately chose the wrong group to follow. Because there is in history some groups that did believe that Jesus had not died. And there was even, some writings as well. And we can get into those details if necessary. But nonetheless, when this question is brought up, please remember that your own book confirms that it's not unusual for God to cause those who he condemns to accept and believe a delusional lie in order that they be sent astray. It's right there. Other examples we see. Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 10, where Jeremiah says it quite blatantly. He says, I said, Lord, you certainly have deceived the people and Jerusalem, because you told them there would be peace. However, now the swords are at their throats. You told them there would be peace, perhaps to lull them into being comfortable. But now, look, the swords are at their throats. You deceived them. This is Jeremiah saying this. You see? So I would return that question to you then. If this is what your God can do, since you posed that to the Islamic position, how then can we trust your God then, if your God is willing to do things like this?